All right, welcome to another episode of the Credder Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Palmieri, and with me today is Jared Russo. He's the editor at Digg. Jared, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me represent Digg.com.
I don't choose what you wear, but we were talking about that shirt earlier, but you definitely represent Digg, and I'm excited to learn more about the inner workings of the business. And I figured we might start with a comment you made like 10 seconds before we started recording, which is that for the next hour, you were supposed to be responsible for keeping an eye on or updating the articles or whatever topics are relevant on the homepage. What does that mean? What kind of control do you have over the homepage at Digg there, and what's going to happen over the next hour while we're recording and nobody's got their eye on the ball?
Uh, Hopefully and thankfully, nothing crazy will happen over the next hour. Um, Essentially, the way it works is when someone at Digg is running front or they're on front, they're just managing the front page, which is our bread and butter. So it's just what goes up, where it's placed, how often do things go up. Like right now, all of the ads they're not going to move. Hopefully nothing like no Friday news dump is being released on a Thursday. God, boy, is this the worst being in New York? Just the sirens and the honking and the construction.
We
It's so
can't hear it.
stereotypical.
We actually can't hear it. You're good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, it's so loud for me. Okay. Then I will continue. So essentially just if you're on front, you're just managing the front page while other people are working on new stuff that goes onto the front page. And I don't want to say it's like easy, but I guess it's easy for me just because like I don't have to think about it. Like I don't have to think about like what we ingest, like what we're gonna write about, like where we're gonna get our sources, like all that stuff is so second nature. And we have a really small staff and we're very well knit. So we all trust each other and know exactly kind of like at any given point, I can like give the reins to someone else and be like, you can manage front for the next 4 hours. I trust you implicitly. We have a brilliant social media editor. So like her stuff is like scheduled out the wazoo. So like I don't have to worry about having to schedule the stuff we write because like that's handled. We have an awesome commerce editor who like has all of the gift guides and all the sponsored stuff and all the ads and like so it's like everyone like does their stuff so well that like whenever I'm running front, it's just like honestly like making sure that like the site doesn't implode. You check the numbers. If things are doing rather well or rather poorly, you kind of move them depending. But considering I just did a major update, I don't feel like I'm gonna have to like stop this interview and like jump in or anything like that. Again, unless like the president gets shot, God forbid, or like something so egregious happens in the world that like we would have to like splice this interview between two separate days. So that's essentially, what happens.
Okay, and so you mentioned kind of the Friday media dump, which we're both, aware of, and anyone who follows the space is pretty aware of these Friday dumps. Does that affect your hours or the team you have on staff on Fridays just to be ready for that kind of in the moment work? So what does that look like kind of preparing for a Friday dump? And let's say that there was a Friday dump. How does that day at work look a little different?
So we did have a plan. For about 2 years, I was the weekend editor. So I did nights, especially Friday night for those sort of big news dumps. And I worked Saturday, Sunday. So I would cover elections, award shows, sports, SNL. Like I would just cover things going on at these weird hours. And just recently, like within the last like week, I've moved on to a normal Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So we've actually not quite figured out like what a Friday news dump looks like. Um, we just had someone we love to death leave Digg, and she was our leader. Her name is Molly. She was our managing editor, and so we're actually hiring like a sort of another de facto leader, and we're hiring another content curator slash editor. So hopefully I'll have a better answer for you in the future when we like reassess like when people work and how we cover stuff like that. But typically I was just working until, Friday late night and just kind of just got whatever was going on. If the president came on to do an address, it was like, oh, his address will be on at 7 p.m. It'd be like, okay, cool, it's going up on the site in half an hour. I'll put that live stream in. And funny enough, the opposite side of the schedule we have covered, because we have this absolutely fantastic news editor. Her name is Darcy. She's in London, and she works a 9 to 5. For her is our 4 a.m. to like 9 a.m. like that, like early morning stuff. We wake up and we start work, and she's already hit all the major beats. She's already covered all the late night talk show stuff. She's so it seems effortless that like she's able to like cover all of these things, so that like when 9 a.m. hits, we've already had that stuff on the site doing well, and then we can like go on and cover new things that are trending, so we don't have to like spend time sort of like regurgitating whatever the hell has hit the morning paper. So we can look at Twitter and we can look at other places and see like, is there a celebrity that's trending? Can we write something about what people are tweeting about that celebrity? Is there a video that broke out? Like recently we found Tom Ball. Do you know who Tom Ball is?
No.
Tom Ball is a singer on America's Got Talent.
Oh yes, I do. Yeah, the Simon and Garfunkel song. Yeah, that was incredible.
So like none of us watch the show because like we're relatively young at Digg, and I'm not interested in what like my parents or other boomers watch on TV. But like that performance captured people's imagination, and so when he did Creep by Radiohead, and like we were like, okay, like we need to like go all in on Tom Ball coverage, in the same way that like Ken Bone became like a kind of like a celebrity. And yeah, so it's nice that Darcy works regular hours for her, but to us it's like extremely early hours. But we have not quite figured out the way to replace me doing nights and weekends yet. But again, fingers crossed that like the Monica Lewinsky scandal happened on a Friday news dump. Like something like that does not happen again.
Right. So one of the things that I want to do in this conversation is really demystify the role of the editor. And I do think there's some nuances between an editor for a standalone publisher versus an editor for a platform where you're aggregating news from all sorts of different sources. And so we'll dig into some of the nuance there. And you'll have to allow me to ask some maybe simple-minded questions along the way, but things that I've always been curious about. I want to start with one, which is kind of around the revenue model. So how much of an editor's job is about making sure that there are ad placements in as many relevant places as possible without overwhelming the users, especially on a platform like yours where there's a lot of different places you could put promoted content or even banner ads and these types of things. So how much of the editor's role is to bear that in mind?
So I can only speak for the places I've worked. And thankfully, there has always been a somewhat clear divide between sales and editorial. So there's always been a team that tells us, like, hey, like, here's the average aspect ratio of like a web browser. So like, this is just like what people's screens normally look like. So we can kind of figure out like how much space, does it slow the site down? Like people tell us that so that we can just focus on our jobs. Like, I don't think I've ever like really had to ever crunch numbers or like calculate like finances or any of that stuff, because that's not my area of expertise. And that would also just be really weird and sketchy to like have the editors be like, well, you're writing about this topic, but really this topic does better. So could you write more? That's not, we just cover what people are interested in, what we think they would be interested in. And we kind of course correct. So we've never had an issue with like, having to think about like what goes in the banner ad. We know that there's a banner ad and it makes us money. And as long as we're doing a good job, people will come to the site. And as long as people come to the site, it will just pay for itself in some way. So yeah, I don't think, I mean, maybe other people have to worry about this, but I've been very lucky and privileged to like not ever had to, had like a sleepless night being like, how are our salaries getting paid? Like, I don't know, someone's paying our salaries. So
And so to that note where you kind of talk about how there's a line in the sand there where you can kind of do your role while the sales side of the business does their role, are there ever times where you have to push back and say like, guys, we're getting a little too ad heavy here. It's starting to kind of annoy the users a bit. I'm a little annoyed looking at the homepage that, one in so many articles is an ad or a promoted piece of content. Do you ever feel like you have to defend the user? Is that your role?
I think it would be our role if that ever were to happen. I've never had that particular issue. I've never like gone to a site and have been like, whoa, like why do we have auto, playing videos? Like I don't work at Netflix. Like Netflix had that issue where it was like auto playing trailers. Um, and there are sites out there, I'm sure, that like does weird, like a pop-up player will happen and an ad will just start rolling and you'll be listening to something in another tab and it'll stop that because it wants to like play you the sound from the other tab. Like I've never had that problem at any website I've ever worked at. And thankfully, we have a commerce editor. His name is Grant, and he is the best because we know what spots on Digg are already going to be sort of like ads. We already have those locked in based on data of like where are the best placements, and just like we don't want too many, so we kind of have them already there. And so he has an updated list constantly of like, hey, there's this really cool jacket from Huckberry based on The Last of Us. And I think our audience would like that because they like that show. And that's just kind of the vibe. So, he'll whip that up. And then I think at like certain points during the day, it'll like sort of like rotate in. And then there'll be like a sort of like bespoke handpicked, like it's an advertisement for Huckberry for that jacket, but like it isn't sort of like we know what it is. And he also does these great gift guides. And a lot of editors have also pitched in. We're like, hey, we wanted to make a list of the best movies or games or books that you should be checking out about a particular topic or maybe the best of the year. And we do make money from Amazon affiliate links, but we put that right at the top. We let everyone know. So there is like if you click this and you buy this, like we do get some money. But we make that so obvious and clear cut, and we do try to limit like how many times that is laid out on the site, that we feel like it's like a really good blend of Digg of like we don't overburden you, we don't hit you over the head. Hopefully the ads are not like super annoying, and it's not like you're like scrolling through and all you're getting is just like commercials for like Carnival Cruise Lines or like all this other stuff that like doesn't fit our audience. So yeah.
And when you're thinking about your audience, and selecting articles and topics and this kind of thing, are you thinking about a specific kind of narrowly defined user persona that you guys have crafted? Are you thinking this is what I would like to see and I match our user pretty well? How do you kind of think about what the audience wants, and who are you thinking about when you try to match that?
That is a fantastic question because that's actually one of the things we do talk about a lot of times. Like we'll be surprised about like what topics do well. And we're constantly thinking about like who really is our audience. Cause like we know what they like and we know what they click on. And we use Digg. So we're also the audience. Like we post stuff that we like because it's sort of like a nice, like I work at Digg because I read Digg and vice versa. Like hopefully you would want to work at Digg because you read Digg. But I'm constantly flabbergasted, like straight up shell shocked at like some of the stuff that like we'll do, not thinking it'll do well, and it will do extremely well. So I want to say that like a typical user, we know they're in North America and they speak English. Like we have Google Analytics for that. But they love a lot of things that don't make sense. If I were to tell you a person is into real estate, cars, baseball, and like classic rock, you're thinking what, like 40s. A guy in his 40s or 50s, like a dude. But then there's like celebrity gossip and like fashion, and like there's like so many like different things, and our audience like eats it up. And we don't know if it's like this one power user who like loves everything, or if it's just like we're just serving so many different audiences. But like a lot of data visualizations, like charts and graphs and maps, about like what people are eating or what they're wearing, or like comparing like how much people make at work, like career stuff.
Hmm.
But then there's like a big section of our audience that love video games and they love tech. Um, so it's puzzling, I guess, if you like really try to think about it. But we also just know that like, hey man, people today they're into crypto and they're into bashing crypto and they're into like, and now they're into like politics. So it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of stuff going on about politics. So I guess we're gonna serve that today. And then maybe tomorrow it'll just be like Furbies. Someone posted about a Furby on Twitter. People are so into Furbies. Furby is trending. Maybe we should get video of like Furby's coming out in stores originally. Like maybe we should write a thing about, like it's like you never really know what's going
So
to
you,
come down
you're
the
you're
pipe.
kind of riding all these little cultural waves, maybe an
Yeah.
hour or two behind the creation of the ripple, right?
Honestly, yeah, a lot of our best posts that are not just straight up like us writing the news, our best stuff is there's a Twitter thread that we noticed kept getting a lot of replies. A thing on Reddit, like there's a Reddit thread that is getting a lot of replies. People are talking about. Um, Tom Ball videos keep showing up in my YouTube recommendations, like constantly, like stuff like that. Like we start to notice these things that bubble up. Like a good example is John Boy Media, the guy who does the sort of lip syncing for like fights during baseball games.
Hmm. Not the bad lip reading people.
No,
Not
no,
that
no,
one.
no. Like
Okay.
like he's a baseball fan who will like because like sometimes you can't hear like what managers are yelling at each other or yelling at the ump. He'll like read their lips and he'll like tell you what's going on or he'll like break down like a baseball moment and
Uh,
like that stuff will trend. And so we'll start posting clips about baseball if like the baseball season's coming up. So it's almost like we have a good sense of like seasonal trends or events or holidays or things like that, birthdays, deaths. But then also there'll just be things that come out of the absolute blue. And it's like, I guess I'm gonna have to learn about Eric Andre and Emily Ratajkowski's relationship because like they're the new it thing. And then lo and behold, I go to a Knicks game at Madison Square Garden and they're there. And it was just
they're
like,
dating?
yeah,
Is
they're
that
dating.
oh wow.
They're dating. And for Valentine's Day, there was a picture of like them naked. It was like, but they intentionally like put emojis around their. But it was one of those things that was like our audience loved it. So I think we like took like a Jezebel piece. And that was like the best performing thing. Like nothing we did that day topped Jezebel showing people like that photo of like they're dating. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the internet world and like real life like converging into one of like, I saw them. They were at Celebrity Row and now they're oh my God, like it was so bizarre.
You missed a big story then. You could have broken that story. Um, so it sounds like part of the job is to be able to identify what's working on other sites, whether it's Reddit, Twitter threads, that kind of thing, and like, you know, be a little bit objective and just say, hey, if it's working, people are interested in it. It's probably going to be interesting to our users as well. But I think a question that I have and that most people would have when, if they had the chance like I'm having right now to ask an editor a question, it would be about what are the like is there a golden metric that you guys are looking at on Digg to determine whether a story is successful or not? Because obviously there's a lot of different things you could track. We talked about them already, clicks, engagement, views, time on site, time on article. Did it lead to a click through on an ad? There's a lot of different things that you could theoretically be tracking. I'm wondering for you, Jared, is there a golden metric where you're like, this one metric kind of tells all?
Uh, there isn't one golden metric, but there's like
If how about this? How about this?
two or three
I
of them.
I kill your entire dashboard and you get to keep
Yeah.
one metric.
Oh, wow. It would probably be click through rate. It'd probably be click through rate. Um, I would say, but there's like two or three that like we really rely on. I mean, we have Google Analytics, and we have a site called Chartbeat, which we use just to kind of look at like views and stuff like that. But in the dashboard of Digg, if you're logged in as an editor and you have access to kind of like play around with the site, there is a feature that shows you like how many people looked at it and how many people clicked it. So like, what is the click through rate? And that's like the best go-to sort of ballpark of just like, wow, this got double digit click through rate. That means a huge portion of the audience that looked at that headline or thumbnail and they were like, I have to read this. So like, I think something today had like double digit click through rate and did really well for us. Um,
Hmm.
I have it up now. Yeah, so we
Yeah,
did our main data guy. His name is Adwait. He's the best. Everyone on my team is the best. I have to
yeah,
give him a shout out.
I'm catching that trend. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because they're all wonderful. I mean, it's a really really small team, so like we it's a good thing everyone likes each other. He did a map about the cost of retirement around the world, sort of visualized, and
Oh,
that
cool.
is our best performing thing of the day. People seem to really really like that article, so that I don't know if they're just curious, they like seeing a map, or if they're thinking about retirement. But they, we'll try to keep serving the audience and showing them cool, like data driven stuff. Because they seem to like it, and we seem to like doing it.
Okay, so another question on that front then is, I'm assuming you have a favorite publication or a favorite couple publications, ones that you go to in your off time. Would it be fair to expect that we see more content from Jared Russo's favorite publications on Digg as a result of your role as the editor?
Um, yeah, I would say that was the case for a while because so like Dig has been around since 2003, 2004, so like almost 20 years. And it had gone through so many different hands and so many different companies. And the original idea of it was like it was sort of like a Reddit before Reddit. So it was like community driven and like it was just kind of taking the best of the internet and just putting it into one place. And over time, it has gone through like huge fluctuations. And the last few years, we really relied on linking out to other publications. So like I love Kotaku. So I would constantly see things on Kotaku and like I would just put them in to the different verticals. And I like Polygon. So like I would find a lot of really cool stuff about pop culture on Polygon. So, but we recently got acquired by the Money Group, and they run money.com and Money Magazine. And the emphasis going forward for this calendar year is to really de-emphasize how many sites we use that link out to other places, and we want to do more unique original content. I Dig to keep people on Dig, instead of having to like rely on other people's work. Because we always hat tip and we always like give credit and we always like make sure that like if we're showing you a thing, it'll say like what website it's from, so that when you click on it, you're going elsewhere.
Right.
But it seems like the goal going forward is to partner with those publications so they do stuff with us and for us instead of us just sort of driving traffic away. So the goal is to like have different people doing different columns and writing more editorials. And I mean, God only knows, like we start doing a podcast, we start doing videos, we start doing reviews, we have someone playing a game on Twitch. I mean, like the possibilities are endless. But for right now, like we're just kind of starting small and we're gonna try to grow our team and grow our traffic and grow the amount of Dig stuff that people who come to Dig they want to read and not have them some sort of just go elsewhere just because like as much as we love everyone else's work at other publications, like we are technically competing with them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You want to obviously keep them on your site because even if you help them find a great article, when they go somewhere else, there's no knowing whether they're going to come back to Dig or if you just kind of sent them away for good for the day. Interesting. So more and more original content by Dig is kind of a direction. Does that mean that you are going to be taking your role as an editor and starting to actually edit more original content, meaning like you're going to be the editorial check on the content by Dig as well? Are you already doing that, or is that going to be somebody else? How's that going to work?
So it's weird the way that like the word editor is used because like literally an editor just edits things. So like in Hollywood, it's like, oh, I'm an editor. I edit the film. And it's not quite that simple. Like it's more all encompassing. Like we do a lot of writing and we check each other's work. But we also manually curate the content from other places, and we pick like what videos from what channels on YouTube we want to share. And it's, sometimes like we'll have to put on different hats, and like Annie will be out and I'll pick up the social media slack. So I'll be the voice of our Twitter and our Facebook page. So it isn't as simple as just like all I do is just copy and check headlines that other people send us. Like we're doing our own stuff. Like we're rewriting headlines, we're writing our own stuff. We're rounding up and we're gathering the best tweets of the week. Like we're gathering memes that people are sharing. Like so it's this odd term to just call us editors, because like that is only like one section of like what we all do. But yeah, the goal is to just is not, maybe not 100%, but it's definitely to like do way more, because right now, like since we are so small, really there's sort of 5 key Digg members, including me, and 3 of them are editorial. Annie is our social media person, and Grant's our commerce. Because we recently had like a bunch of people sort of like leave for various reasons, and so we can only do so much. We can only post so many things. We can only write so many original things. And so if the team grows, then the amount of new stuff, new voices, like new types of new pieces, new interesting things. If somebody wants to write poetry, for all I know, maybe Digg will have a poetry section, and someone will just be doing poetry for us. Who knows what the future will bring?
That's cool though, that after, post acquisition, the idea that you guys would be doing more original reporting with your own staff members means new team members, bigger team, which means that the acquiring company, the Money Group, is willing to invest in Digg, which I guess is a really good sign, rather than just kind of leaning it out and trying to get the best, quickest return on that capital. You mentioned kind of Digg's early days. I think it was 2003, like you said, around there when it was founded. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I had Jay Adelson, one of the original co-founders, on the Credder Podcast. We did a deep dive on the founding story of Digg, so you should definitely go check that out at some time. But I'm curious, if you were aware of Digg in those days, because you and I were both kind of on the younger side. 2003, I don't know about you. I'm not sure I was as plugged. I don't think I was plugged in back then. So I'm curious if you kind of like, what are some of your first memories of Digg are on the scene, and how you think Digg is different from then to now.
It's funny. I wasn't super familiar with Digg, because I know in high school, like Thark and Digg, and like there was like a couple of websites that like rounded up like Florida Man stories, and those were quite humorous in your teenage years. Of just like Florida Man has arm ripped off by alligator, and like there were different places that sort of like collected those types of stories. But it was never a website I actively read, but it was one that I know existed, because I know that like the Tech TV guys were involved, and like they branched off and did like Tech TV G4. So like there's like a lot of like lineage of like somewhat internet famous people like who had their hands touching Digg at some point. And it wasn't really until the job listing where I was like, oh, that's right, Digg is still around, it still exists. And I like saw what they were doing, and I was like, oh, I like this, because I like a lot of different topics, and this site is trying to cover as many different topics as possible in a variety of ways. This seems like an incredible gig. And then I started to read it as I was interviewing, and then like I sort of became like a power user once I started, just because I hadn't even like thought about Digg for years. And so that mantra of like Digg still exists, is still around, became a sort of joke internally that we now use as our Twitter banner. So it's like the Grim Reaper being like, Digg is still around, and we have a shirt of it. Like we want it to like, we want to come back in a big way of like, yeah, I mean, we might be completely different than what you might have read years ago, but like we're still around, and we're not Reddit, and we're not the New York Times, but we are this weird, interesting, unique thing that exists in the center of all of it, where we can do hardcore, strict news stories and just like report stuff and do it really well and competently, and also showcase the dumbest possible people on Twitter, the one main characters, where someone says something really dumb and everyone dunks on them. Like we love covering that stuff and everything in between. So like there really isn't a sort of limit or cap on what Digg is capable of. And so we have a game plan. The money.com, we've been talking to their editors for months now. We have a good game plan. We have a good idea of like where the site's going to be going in the future. But yeah, it wasn't like I was like on Digg.com every day back in high school, because 2005, I'm a freshman in high school, and someone like the first day of school goes, "Did you hear about YouTube? Anything goes on YouTube." And we just started looking up YouTube videos, and we were like, "Oh my God, anyone can just post anything on YouTube." And MySpace hit that year, and everyone had to update their MySpace and like change the music and the font and the colors. And the next year, sophomore year, 2006 or 7, Facebook. Wait, we all got rid of MySpace? What happened to that? I have to get a Facebook now? So like that, those were like the biggest sites at the time. Like that was like, AIM chat and stuff like that. So like, I don't know. Digg never penetrated my world, but hopefully it'll become a bigger part of the internet soon to come.
Yeah, I'm really glad that Digg is leaning into the meme that like, oh, Digg still exists. I think it's hilarious. And I don't know how much you follow Gary Vaynerchuk, marketing guy. But he is a big believer that nostalgia is really big as far as brand value. And he believes that there's going to be a lot of kind of early internet nostalgic brands that are going to get repurposed, retooled, reinvested in, and are going to like live on and have a big second life. And I think Digg is very well positioned for that. You mentioned kind of looking at Digg and thinking that the Digg gig would be, sorry, I had to do it. Digg gig would be a good role. You did a stint, I think it was about a year at Google as content curator. Is that right? So I'm curious, were you touching the Google News product or doing kind of content curation for other projects within the Google domain? What was your kind of time there like?
So I'm going to make a very long story as short as I can, because I don't want to keep you here for another 2 hours. But I got a call out of the blue from a recruiter from Google who was rounding up a bunch of journalists to work on they pitched it as a project. And a bunch of us got hired at once. And it was 3 teams from 4 a.m. to noon, from noon to 8, and from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. And that's the one I ended up working on, was the night shift. And all these journalists would do was look at Google Trends, just look at the top 250, whatever is trending. And we would make sure that whatever news articles floated to the top based on those search terms were valid news articles, were all true, were places that people respected and trusted. And because this was right around like the Trump era. So Google did not want to be accused of fake news, and they wanted to make sure that everything was as accurate and well-sourced and correct as possible. And the other part of that job was also making sure that whenever people did voice search for the Google Assistant, whatever the voice would tell you was also as true as possible up to the second. So the night shift was, what's the score in the NBA Finals game? And it would tell you, because we would write it, because we were watching the NBA Finals game. If you were to search to make sure that if Eddie Murphy had died in a snowmobile accident or Johnny Depp had died in a skiing accident, which pops up every now and again. No, they did not die. That's an old internet rumor. Here is the story. They are still alive, we can assure you. And that was our job. And then after about a year, I don't know if I'm out of school telling you the story, but after a year or so, they had us teach the India staff how to do what we were doing. And we looked at each other and we went, I mean, they're super cool. We get along with them great. Why are we teaching them to? Oh, because they're laying all of us off. And now the team in India is going to be doing those weird hours. So like it seemed like the whole thing had like fallen apart within like a year or two. And now I have absolutely no idea what Google does, but I can tell you that internally, the Google Assistant's voice is named Holly. And because of the popularity of Alexa, they declined to name it Holly publicly. But just so you know, back when I worked there, her name was Holly.
Why does Holly conflict with Alexa?
I guess because Amazon had a name for their voice, Google didn't want a girl name for their
Mm,
voice. You know what I
mm.
mean? Like maybe they just wanted to keep it like the word Google in people's heads instead of like Alexa, whatever is, because if you were just to say, hey, Amazon, blah, 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 I don't know. I guess it's just different philosophies, but yeah.
Okay. And so if you don't mind me double clicking a little bit and obviously only say what you're comfortable with, during that time when they had you kind of training up the India staff, were there rumblings amongst you and your colleagues? Like you could kind of see what was coming around the corner, and how long, from when you started training up the Indian team to when you guys were let go?
So this happens at a lot of places. A lot of writers and people in media and arts and entertainment and journalism, there will just randomly be mass layoffs. It's happened most of my career. My first job out of grad school was AOL, and Verizon bought AOL, and then a while later they bought Yahoo, and there was a lot of redundancies, and so they had to do impacts, which is just layoffs, as corporate speak, impacts.
Or
And
right sizing.
oh
That's
god,
another one.
unbelievable, the corporate buzzword jargon speak. Um, but yeah, I think there were rumblings because like people were leaving for other places, and I feel like there was like a good 2 weeks where like we were really looking around at each other because like I think we were training them for a bit and we didn't think anything of it because nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But there was like a weird 2 weeks where there was like a big all hands coming up, and like someone had left premature. Like it was a weird sense of doom. And then like I remember like my boss, bless his heart, we still keep in touch. He like pulled me aside. He was like, "Hey, like I'm moving to Austin, Texas, and like they're gonna like reposition me in the company, so I'm gonna go to their office and maybe grab a few people. Do you want to move to Austin, Texas?" And I was like, "No, not really." And he was like, "Okay," because like I think the hammer's coming down. So they brought us all into a big room, and it was just like, you have 90 days. Like we're only going to keep a handful of you. And then they did some weird internal process to figure out who they were keeping. It was a whole thing. So that sucked, but that is a part of the gig. It is hard to keep a job being like an actual true blue journalist with the fedora with the news thing on the side and keep your job for a while because it just seems like these multimedia conglomerates, they get bored or just whatever, they need to boost the stock, and they'll just cut you. So it's hard to stick with a place for more than a year or two. And that really sucks because I so many places I wanted to stay with the staff, I wanted to stay with the site, I wanted to get promoted, I wanted to move up the chain, I wanted to keep doing good work and do more. And that opportunity, it seems like it's very rare to happen. And so I'm very thankful that so far, Digg will be my longest tenure, and I won't have to come on this podcast in 5 years and be like, "Can you believe what happened to Digg?" That doesn't seem to be the case whatsoever.
Yeah, it's this kind of cost of labor arbitrage. And I'd imagine, if I had to guess, since the Indian team took over, perhaps that Indian team then at some point had to train up the Bangladeshian team, and they did the flip to arbitrage an extra 12 cents off the hour again, and this
Yeah.
actually leads to the last topic I want to discuss with you, which is the role of AI in the kind of content curation business. Obviously, one of the even cheaper forms of labor is AI. And I'm curious how much you think that AI is coming, maybe not in the immediate term, but in the maybe 5 to 10 year span, what aspects of the role it's coming for, and if you're starting to sweat.
I don't want to say I'm starting to sweat, but it's very funny how it seemed like business people, either in my world or in the world out there, were very, very preoccupied with crypto in a way that like cynics like me and people I knew was like, such a scam. What a dumb bubble. Who would fall for that? And lo and behold, someone who I used to work for at the head of the company was very big into Bitcoin, and then everything falls apart, and then consequences. Um, the same thing happened with Chat GPT, where I think I looked around at people I knew and was like, this doesn't feel like crypto because it doesn't seem like crypto has like a real use case. It doesn't have a purpose. It's fake money that people use to scam each other out of money. Like I can see why AI can be used for a variety of things, but this particular version of it seemed like it was really good at writing essays for kids in high school. And I'm not quite sure how you would implement that unless you were asking it to write you an essay on Catcher in the Rye. And then someone in our company was like, hey, what do you guys think about ChatGPT? And we all had that like, oh God. And so we looked at it, we checked it out, and found people had already been covering like the inaccuracies. CNET using, robots or whatever to like just pump and dump articles, and it just seemed like it was a lot messier and more complicated because it brings with it so many more problems that it's not really solving any one problem. Like it is a solution looking for problems, and then once you get it in there, it'll probably cause 10,000 more issues because then you're having to hire people to check the work of the robot that you thought would be faster, but in reality, it's a whole mess. So no one has told anyone at Digg we have to use ChatGPT or AI. No one has forced us to. When that question popped up, we didn't push back hard. It was really like I don't think this is the real deal. And that just it went away. And so I'm sure it will be a thing that Microsoft and Google and Apple and Facebook and Amazon invest billions in, because that's what they do. And I'm sure something good will come of it. I'm sure there's like great cases for it for medical purposes or just helping people in a variety of ways. And I'm sure there's also nefarious reasons that the military would love it, But as it stands right now, it's really good for comedy, for jokes. It's good for writing essays. And I'm not quite sure anyone can ever like replace the human touch of like, hey, look at these hilarious memes that people made, and we're going to make our own memes because AI created artwork is cool and AI created memes are somewhat comical, but like it does not hold a candle to like a creative person coming up with legit ideas. It just seems like I don't envision in the short term it's going to like write up the news for us. But I don't know what happens in 10 years when it helps assist you writing the news. Maybe it like helps point out like you're using this word too much or like, so I don't know. I have no idea, but it is so funny you asked that because it really has like popped up recently in a way we all just kind of like went, is this happening? Are we all going to lose our jobs to robots? No, we are not losing our jobs to robots. And I really hope that no one else loses their job to robots, because robots seem to be very good at only certain things, and not good at other stuff yet. So until they get smarter and better, I think we're fine for now. I hope. But again, the business people, they're the ones who are going to make the calls, and who knows what the hell a CEO is thinking right now. Like that second Knives Out movie, The Glass Onion with the fax machine.
Just watched it. Yeah.
Of all the ridiculous ideas, like I swear to you, in the script, it was just like a fake digital currency, AI writing things like
kids equals NFT. That was the example in the movie.
That's honestly, I bet you what CEOs think when they ask their staff about stuff like this.
Yeah. Well, one interesting point that you just made is that maybe the AI will be writing content, but it'll probably need a human touch for a while. So maybe the role of the editor becomes editing the content that an AI creates. Maybe the editor is actually downstream in the future, but still necessary. Anyway, we can chew on that in our own time. The last two questions I want to get to, I ask every guest that comes on the podcast, but before I do you want to give listeners some places that they can go follow your work or check out, all the amazing work you guys are doing at Digg?
Yeah, well, Digg.com, obviously. I've said that word 8 billion times during this interview. that's where we do all of our everything. I mean, everything really, you know, funnels through Digg. So if you go to Digg's Twitter or Digg's Facebook or Digg on LinkedIn or whatever, it'll just be the stuff you see on the front page. Those two things are very connected. Um, for anything else that I do, I mean, I do podcasts on the side and stuff that would all be on my Twitter. So if you're interested in hearing me talk about fantasy basketball or the X Files or some other podcast that I guest on and or host, I'm on Twitter at Jared Russo. I'm sure I would love to speak with anyone listening to this, but you never know who's an AI. You never know who's a robot. And I'm not quite sure AI have evolved to the point yet where they can come up with their own thoughts and come up with their, you know, like the critical decision and the creativity that is like needed to become sentient. So that's why I'm not like super worried that I could come up with like this brilliant pitch for like a column, because it's just like AI, you're relying too much on like other people's stuff on the internet to like, you know, so.
Okay. So last two questions for you here. One of them you kind of touched on a little bit, which is Bitcoin. What do you think about Bitcoin in particular? Maybe you don't, maybe there's not a distinction to you between Bitcoin and crypto, but I'll just throw it out there with Bitcoin in particular. What do you think?
Total scam, total joke. Crypto and Bitcoin and all that stuff to me is all the same. It's all junk. Like it just seems like such a fugazi, and that's different than like blockchain technology. Like blockchain technology is different. Like I can divide those two things in my head, like, but I haven't seen a really compelling case for blockchain tech, and all I see are the negatives, the environmental issues, like the weird black market stuff it creates, the endless amount of like crime that it has now like produced, you know, like driving up the cost of like computer bits and processors and like all that stuff that the pandemic like exacerbated on. Like it seems like such not a good use of anyone's time or money. Like it's like, why are we going down this road? Like we have other issues to deal with, and everyone is just like, but what if I got a digital receipt for selling drugs and I used Bitcoin to pay for it? Two thumbs down for me.
Okay. And very last question for you here today, Jared, is are we living in a simulation?
God, I hope not. I really
Why?
hope not,
Would
because
it
it'd
be
be one
bad?
stupid simulation. It would be really dumb that the simulation that we're in, whether it be a game or a brain in a vat or the Matrix or any of that stuff, to have come up with the last 24 years of news. Have you seen the news? Have you
Yeah,
seen
I
what's
have.
going on planet Earth? It seems like we got to the year 2000 and everything was like two thumbs up, you know, cool. And then it was like the Gore Bush election, hanging Chad, hanging, not hanging Chads, hanging Chad, 9/11, the Patriots cheating during all those Super Bowls. It just seemed like everyone lost their collective minds. And we have not gotten back to that at all. And then a game show host became president, and things are even just spinning their wheels off the course now, that like I see Twitter's trending on for World War III a lot. And my thought isn't like, oh, World War III is trending. My thought is now, Twitter, what have you become? You're a why did Elon Musk buy you? You suck now as a product. Not even concerned with World War III. So yeah, sorry, script writers of the simulation that we might be in. You're doing a terrible job. Can you like give us all a bunch of money and health insurance? Can you like have aliens come and like tell us like, guys, you're really screwing this up. Not a good simulation. Terrible. If that's the case, I don't think so, but
Maybe to save money, the writers of the simulation hired out AI instead, and they've just been phoning it in ever since.
simulation, can you please give the Jets a quarterback? Like, can things finally go my way for once in my life?
All right, we'll end it there with the Jets needing a help from the god hand of the simulation lords. Jared, thank you so much for your time today, man. This was really cool to kind of get the deep dive perspective from the editor's seat. I learned a lot. I think it'll be super useful to listeners, and I'm really truly excited to see what comes of Digg and the fact that Digg still exists. So keep it up, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Love being on. And yeah, I also look forward to what the future of Digg holds too.
Cool.